Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about Arwen, Mortal Queen, and first up, a massive thank you to MTG Goldfish for the translated version of this card. Yeah, this is a very exciting one, and one that many are saying, like Arwen is the new Myojin, and let's talk about why. A 2/2 Elf Noble that costs 1 green, white, so just 3 mana, a very low-to-the-ground commander. As it enters the battlefield, it enters with an indestructible counter on it. So she is tough to take out. Again, an early low-to-the-ground creature that is indestructible. But of course, you can utilize the indestructible counter. Again, just like the Myojin, pay 1, remove an indestructible counter from Arwen. Another target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Then you get a +1 counter and a lifelink counter on that creature, and a +1 counter and a lifelink counter on Arwen. Now, very flavorful, very, reminiscent of the scene from Lord of the Rings where Arwen's like, and yes, I will live my life with you. Or, that's definitely an exact quote. But basically, again, a low-to-the-ground commander that is very hard to take out. Again, indestructibility is not, perfect when it comes to actually taking, a creature and saying, hey, you can never take this out. I mean, you could bounce it, you can exile it. There's a good amount of things that you can do to take it out. That being said, indestructible saves you from the vast majority of board wipes. And also, yeah, this commander can share that indestructibility in a way. Now, unfortunately, you're not permanently granting indestructibility to something else. It is temporary. That being said, you can utilize Arwen to save, another key piece that an opponent might be trying to take out. Or you might, kind of weigh things. You might say, all right, Arwen's in play, but my other big, really key creature is in play right now. And hey, an opponent casts a board wipe, I'll sacrifice Arwen, which I can get back, go to the command zone, recast, it's not that expensive, and save my other key creature. On top of that, again, that key creature gets slightly larger with that counter, and of course, also gets a lifelink counter on it. And there's some ways to really take advantage, of course, of counters, and maybe moving some and sharing some, and yeah, there's just some really exciting, interesting things that you can do with this one. And some oppressive things that you can do with it as well. So yeah, Arwen, I really like the design of this one again. I think players out there are going to be excited about it. Low to the ground, indestructibility kind of like plays. Again, kind of like that Myojin, but different. This one, again, unlike the Myojin, does not require you to cast it from your hand. It's just an ETB. So of course, you can use and abuse that quite easily, especially since you have access to white. And yeah, there's plenty of ways to take advantage of counters, plenty of ways to take advantage of lifelink. We're going to be going through those and more on this episode. Again, with these quick takes, I'm going to take you through the budget buys, cards that are less than $1, cards that are within my budget, and the pricier picks, cards that are outside of my budget, cards that are more than $1. And some a lot more than $1, unfortunately, but that's okay. Regardless, all these cards will be in a card list link in the description below, so make sure you check that out. Now, with all that said, let's talk about the budget buys. We're going to start off with a fantastic one. The first one that came to my mind, though I can never remember the name, I just have to always Google Scryfall search, essentially, shield counter, and I always find it. Contractual Safeguard. A fantastic card for just 22 cents, an instant for 3 mana. Now, if you cast it during your main phase, you get a shield counter, a creature control. Cool. We don't necessarily really care about that, though, because we care about a counter that is better than a shield counter, and that is that indestructibility counter, because it says, choose a kind of counter on a creature you control, put a counter of that kind on each other creature you control, and that is massive. That is huge. This is basically, hey, all your creatures are indestructible. I mean, most 3 mana, indestructibility cards, like, there's a populate one that's not coming to my mind right now what the name is. Rootborn Defenses. There we go. We got there. That one's just temporary indestructibility, right? This one, though, in combination with your commander's indestructibility counter is like, hey, every single creature gets an indestructibility counter. So, yeah, you might not have to actually remove that counter from your commander. That being said, sure, you can utilize this in the lifelink counter, a +1 counter, whatever you want. Maybe in that shield counter. Most likely, though, you're going to use and abuse that indestructibility counter. Next up, Lae'zel. I can never pronounce that correct. I think it's Lae'zel. Blackith's Champion. There we go. We got there. Maybe. Probably not. Anyways, 3/3 Gift Warrior. If you would put 1 or more counters on a creature or planeswalker you control, or on yourself, put that many +1 of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent player instead. This is one of the only, if the only, budget way to essentially double up counters of any kind. There's other ways, of course, that we'll talk about here in a bit. But yeah, a fantastic card for this kind of a strategy. Again, with your commander ETBing, now getting 2 indestructibility counters. Now, that does absolutely nothing for your commander to have 2 of them, except, well, hey, you can pay 1 and remove 1 of them, and it's still indestructible. So again, you can still utilize that share the indestructibility, and of course there's other ways to move around counters as well that we'll talk about here in a bit. On top of that, of course, hey, if you are utilizing that ability, getting a lifelink counter, well, getting 2 on another creature really doesn't matter all that much most of the time, but getting 2+1 mana counters is quite nice as well on that creature and on your commander. Next up, Odric Lunarch Marsh. Now, Odric does not help you share counters, but kind of. At the beginning of each combat, creature control gain first strike until end of turn. If a creature controls first strike, the same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. I always get a laugh every time I see skulk there. Just a weird mechanic, weird keyword. Anyways, this one essentially is like, hey, I'm not going to be sharing those counters, but I am going to say, okay, if you have a counter, if anyone has an indestructibility counter, including your commander, all your creatures are indestructible every single combat and for the rest of the turn. And then also the same is going to be true for, well, lifelink if you got a lifelink counter or any of the other ones. So basically, hey, your creatures are always going to be protected in combat with that indestructibility, which is massive. Or, yeah, you can also gain a ton of life. So Odric can do a ton of work for you. Next up, Cankerbloom. Let's talk about proliferating and why it's so good with this kind of a commander. Pay 1, sacrifice it, choose 1, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or proliferate. Yeah, a 3/2 for this 2-mana does all this. This is huge. Just being able to, well, take out some things is nice, but also having that option to proliferate makes it so good in this kind of attack. Again, if you are getting those counters on other creatures, lifelink, ++1 counters, cool, get extra ones of those. But also, again, with your commander, if you can keep up that indestructibility counter and get more and more on your commander, you've got more opportunities to actually use that counter so that you can, save other creatures, give other creatures, lifelink, etc., etc. Moving on, how about a repeatable way to proliferate? A great card, Grateful Apparition. A 1/1 flyer, so it is evasive. When it deals counters to a player planeswalker, you proliferate. So if this gets through on anyone, and typically it can, again, at least on one player, because there's going to be one player that doesn't have a flyer out there, most likely. Hey, get that counter on, your commander again. Get more indestructibility counters on there. Get more +1 counters on your creatures too. More lifelink counters, sure, why not? It can make a massive difference. And yeah, you've got a good amount of ways to proliferate, and we'll talk about some others here in a bit in the pricier picks as well. Moving on, Cloud Shift. Again, keep in mind, unlike the Myojin, which obviously this new commander is kind of reminiscent of in a kind of a weird way, this commander gets that indestructibility counter on ETB. No requirement for it being cast from your hand, unlike the Myojin, unfortunately. For them, at least. Anyways, so Cloud Shift, a simple blink spell for 1 mana, blink a creature, bring it back into play under your control, essentially. Yeah, this is a great way to reset your commander. Again, you can utilize the indestructibility counter and be like, oh no, I don't have that counter anymore. And the opponent's like, haha, I shall take your commander out. And then you're like, 1 mana, save my commander, get that ETB with an indestructibility counter again. So it's a great way to reset things when you need to, or take advantage of other ETBs. And we'll talk about some fantastic ones here in a bit. Next up, Magus of the Disc. This is the kind of commander that can get pretty disgusting if you decide to go in that direction. Magus the Disc is a repeatable board wipe. Enters the battlefield, tap, pay 1, tap, destroy artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Basically, Nevin rolls Disc on a creature. Now, normally this would get destroyed, right? Because it says destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. It doesn't say other creatures. It destroys itself in the process. So this shouldn't be a repeatable board wipe, but with this commander, you're like, you know what? Let's just share the indestructibility. Again, maybe you've got a way to give indestructibility to this, with that way to share the counter. Maybe we've got Odric in play, so we go to combat, we get indestructibility for this and all of our other creatures, and then we utilize this every single turn we can to continuously wipe out our opponent's creatures and artifacts and enchantments, but to keep our creatures untouched. So yeah, a repeatable one-sided board wipe. You can do some gross things with this. Speaking of which, Sunblast Angel, a 4/5 flyer that has, when it enters the battlefield, destroy all tapped creatures. Now, this one, again, you can play with, and you can say, yeah, I'm just not going to have any tapped creatures, and then, therefore, this is going to destroy my opponent's creatures that are tapped. On top of that, obviously, you could still, have Odric in play, have something in play to give indestructibility to your creatures, still swing out, still, ETB, blink this, whatever you need to do, destroy tapped creatures as well. Again, being able to use and abuse indestructibility can be a massive thing, especially if you're willing to go, I'm not going to say mean direction, but direction that maybe you should ask your playgroup first of, which I learned too. Don't have 15 board wipes in your deck unless you're willing to have your group be mad at you, and you should probably ask ahead of time that if they're okay with, board wipe tribal essentially. If they are, Realm Cloak Giant, another great one as well. Sorcery Adventure, destroy all non-giant creatures. It's also a 7/7 vigilant creature. So yeah, being able to get this in play, maybe getting it indestructible, maybe getting it lifelink. There's a lot of board wipes, obviously, and mono white creatures that have board wipes too, so make sure you're taking advantage of those. So yeah, but again, please be cognizant this might not be the direction to take your deck if your play group isn't okay with repeatable board wipe tribal. So there you go. But now let's move on to the pricier picks. Again, we talked about all the budget buys. Let's talk about the cards that are unfortunately outside of my budget. Some a little bit, some a lot of it. First up, let's start off with Nesting Grounds, a fantastic land that I wish they would reprint again because it's so good. Pay 1, tap, move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent, activate spell every time you can activate a sorcery. Basically, your commander, again, has the indestructibility counter on it. Again, like I mentioned, there's ways to proliferate. There's ways to use and abuse that ETB to get it again and again and again. Share that indestructibility counter in a different way. Move it from your commander onto another creature. Again, when your commander utilizes the ability to basically give indestructibility, it is temporary. This makes it permanent, essentially. Just share that permanently. Now you won't get, obviously, that ++1 counter in lifelink, but indestructible counters are probably the most valuable kind out there. I mean, hexproof as well. A lot of really good counters, but still. Moving on, another great land to consider, Karn's Bastion. Again, you're in a 2-color deck. You've got ways to ramp. You've got plenty of ways to fix your mana. So, you know what? You can utilize some utility lands like this. Tap right colors, pay 4, tap proliferate. Again, proliferating is huge. This card basically doesn't take a base slot in your deck, and this can just do so much work for you. You're getting, indestructibility counters on your commander. You're getting lifelink counters on things too. I guess you could get more and then move them anyways. +1 counters are probably more likely that you're really caring about actually getting more and more on creatures. So yeah, you just get a single counter on a creature, and it might start off really small, but it can become absolutely massive in no time. And it really will become absolutely massive in no time when you use something like Evolution Sage. Whenever a land enters battlefield under control, proliferate. Yeah, you're in green, obviously. This is green. And hey, you've got plenty of ways to land ramp. Even if you're just using an Evolving Wilds, that is proliferate twice. That is absurd. That is insane. This used to be budget. It wasn't. It is now. It is. It isn't. It just keeps going back and forth. And yeah, it's very, very, very good for a reason. Next up, Ephemerate, basically better Cloud Shift. A double blink in a way. Exile creature control, turn to the battlefield under its control. Cool. Rebound, it goes away, it comes back, it's exiled. You get to recast at the beginning of your next upkeep. So, hey, blink your commander again to reset that counter if you need to. Speaking of a repeatable way, though, Teleportation Circle. Beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact creature control, then return that card to the battlefield under its control. An incredible card, basically Conjurer's Closet as well. So, I mean, obviously, any of those kind of repeatable blink effects are going to be great with this kind of a commander because, yeah, you can save something in combat with your commander. You can give lifelink and a counter to your other creatures, but you can also reset your commander to ensure that you keep that indestructibility counter going. Next up, if I don't mention this, I get yelled at in the comments below. If a commander works well with it, yeah, Doubling Season works with a lot of commanders. It's like $85. It's absurd. If an effect would create 1 more tokens, double that. Cool. I mean, if you got token effects, good for you. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, puts twice that many. So again, just basically doubling up the number of counters that come on your commander is huge because, again, you've got 1 freebie to utilize. I mean, it's not free. You got to pay a mana to do so, but you know what I mean. So we got that. We also have, obviously, when you activate your commander and put a counter on another creature, now that doubles it. Now, 2 lifelink counters usually doesn't matter, but again, 2+1 counters, this can really benefit you. And every single time you proliferate, now you're doubling that up, which can be absolutely absurd. So yeah, Doubling Season, great. Who knew? Moving on, Magetta the Line. Again, if you are going like indestructibility, tribal or whatnot, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that the foil version of this is $52 or $51. Regardless, the budget version of this is $1.11, just slightly outside of my budget. Magetta is a great card. Again, discarding 2 cards. Let's say doubling discarding cards. I don't know where I was going with that. Regardless, pay 2, white, tap, discard 2 cards from your hand. Destroy creatures except for Magetta the Lion. Those creatures can't be regenerated. Again, a repeatable board wipe. Now, this one does protect itself. Doesn't protect your other creatures, though. And, of course, your commander is going to be fine if it has the indestructibility counter on it. But obviously, like I mentioned earlier, plenty of ways to give your team indestructible. Next up, Nova Blast Worm. This is a free way to wipe the board again and again and again. A 7/7 worm for 7 mana when it attacks, destroy all other creatures. Again, this one will be fine. This one will just be unscathed. Everything else will be taken out except for your army, right? Because again, you are prepared. You're ready to save all of them. And then, yeah, let me just throw one last one in here, which is like $12 because of Dinosaur Tribal. Awakening Sun's Avatar. 7/7 Dinosaur Avatar. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if you cast for your hand, destroy all non-dinosaur creatures. Yeah, this one, again, is an ETB that does have that cast requirement, so keep that in mind. That being said, if you got a way to bounce it back to your hand, cool. You can use and abuse that ETB. Regardless, yeah, creatures that have great, destroy all wrath effects, essentially, you can really utilize with a commander like this. That being said, yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting commander. Again, people are saying like it's kind of like, Arwen the Myojin, which is just kind of funny, but obviously working in a different way. Keep in mind, again, there is no cast requirement for that ETB, and that is massive. You can utilize the indestructibility counter again and again and again in many ways. You can spread it out throughout your team. You can do a lot of exciting things. So yeah, I think a lot of players out there are going to be pretty excited about this one. Again, if you are one of those players, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. Make sure you're staying tuned to other quick takes and spoilers as well. And yeah, with that, this episode is coming to a close. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on it in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.